I'm Vanessa Carter. I'm 34 years old, and on Mother's Day, my husband slapped me in front of his entire family. Not during an argument, not behind closed doors, right there, between the cake and the champagne. And what happened after? His powerful family lost everything they spent 30 years building. It started at his mother's mansion. Crystal chandeliers, white roses everywhere, fake smiles at every table. His mother, Diane Whitmore, loved hosting parties just to remind people how rich they weren't. I arrived carrying our 2-year-old daughter on my hip while balancing a gift bag in the other hand. My husband, Ethan, barely looked at me. "Try not to embarrass me today," he whispered as guests walked by. I should have left right then, but I stayed. Because women like me are trained to survive humiliation quietly. At dinner, Diane tapped her wine glass dramatically. "I want to thank Ethan," she announced proudly, "a man who works hard enough to give this family its perfect image." Everyone clapped. Then she looked directly at me. "And of course, Vanessa does what she can." The table laughed softly. Even Ethan smirked. My chest burned, but I stayed silent for my daughter sitting beside me coloring on the tablecloth. Then Diane pulled out a photo album. "Oh, look," she laughed. "Pictures from before Ethan upgraded his life." The first photo showed me pregnant, exhausted, wearing cheap maternity clothes while Ethan stood beside me in his designer suit. "She looked so different back then," Diane mocked. Someone whispered, "He definitely married beneath him." More laughter. I felt my eyes sting. Then my daughter suddenly held up her drawing proudly. "Mommy is the prettiest." The room went quiet for half a second, and Diane rolled her eyes. "Sweetheart," she said coldly to my child, "pretty women don't look tired all the time." That broke something inside me. I stood up slowly. "You don't get to speak to my daughter like that." The entire room froze. Ethan grabbed my wrist hard enough to hurt. "Sit down," he hissed through his teeth. "No." And then he slapped me. Hard. The sound echoed across the dining room. My daughter started crying instantly. Nobody moved. Not his father, not his cousins, not even his mother. Diane simply sipped her wine like this was normal. And Ethan? He pointed at me in front of everyone. "You ruin every important moment in my life." I held my shaking cheek while my little girl cried against my dress. That's when a calm voice came from the doorway. "Then this will ruin yours." Everyone turned, and standing there, in a black tailored suit with security behind her, was my mother. The same woman Ethan's family once called irrelevant. But what they didn't know? My mother owned the investment firm secretly funding almost every luxury project Ethan's family business had launched in the last 8 years, and she had just walked in holding a folder thick enough to destroy them all. The entire room went silent the second my mother stepped inside. Even Ethan let go of my wrist, because suddenly, the woman they spent years mocking didn't look irrelevant anymore. She looked dangerous. My mother, Victoria Hale, walked calmly across the marble floor like she owned the mansion. Technically, half the mortgage was tied to her company. Diane forced a fake laugh. "Oh my God, Vanessa invited her mother?" My mom ignored her completely. Instead, she walked straight to me, gently touched my swollen cheek, then looked at Ethan. "You hit her?" she asked quietly. Ethan straightened his jacket, trying to act confident again. "Family matters are private." My mother smiled slightly. "They were private until you did it publicly." Nobody spoke, not even the servers. Then my mother handed me her phone. "Take your daughter upstairs, sweetheart." "But Mom..." "Now." Something in her voice made me listen. As I carried my crying daughter toward the staircase, I heard Diane scoff loudly behind me. "This is dramatic even for your side of the family." That's when my mother finally turned toward the table and destroyed them. "You know what's dramatic?" she said calmly. "Building your entire empire using money you never earned." The room froze. Ethan's father stood immediately. "That's enough." No, my mother replied. What's enough is pretending the Whitmore family built success through hard work while secretly drowning in debt for over a decade. Diane's smile disappeared. My mother opened the thick folder. Inside were contracts, bank statements, investment transfers, and every signature belonged to Ethan's family. You borrowed $72 million from Hale Capital over 8 years, my mother continued. Without us, your hotels wouldn't exist. Your charities wouldn't exist. Hell, this party wouldn't exist. Whispers exploded around the room. Guests started checking each other's faces nervously. Ethan looked pale now. You funded us, he snapped. So what? My mother's expression turned cold. Read page 6. He grabbed the papers aggressively. Then his face changed. Completely. Because buried inside the agreement was one terrifying clause: immediate contract termination in cases involving public scandal, violence, or reputational harm against affiliated family members. And Ethan had just slapped the daughter of the woman financing his empire, in front of over 40 witnesses. Diane stood so fast her chair nearly fell backward. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm very serious, my mother replied. Then she nodded toward the windows. Outside, black luxury SUVs started pulling into the driveway, one after another. Lawyers, auditors, corporate investigators. My mother had planned everything the moment she got my text 20 minutes earlier. He hit me. Panic spread instantly across the party. Guests grabbed purses. Men loosened ties. Someone quietly slipped out the back door. Ethan stormed toward my mother furiously. You're trying to destroy us over one mistake? One mistake? My mother repeated softly. Then she looked directly at him. You abused my daughter for years. Tonight, you finally did it where people could see. That sentence hit harder than the slap ever did, because deep down, he knew she was right. And then my mother delivered the final blow. As of midnight, every Hale-backed account funding Whitmore Holdings will be frozen. Diane gasped. Ethan's father actually stumbled backward into the table. No, he whispered. My mother closed the folder calmly. Yes. Upstairs, I stood trembling while holding my daughter close, listening to the sound of an empire collapsing floor by floor beneath me. And then my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. You started a war. I looked down at my little girl sleeping against my shoulder and sent one final reply. No, you slapped a woman whose mother taught her never to stay silent again. By midnight, the party was over. Not because guests wanted to leave, but because the Whitmore family was falling apart in real time. I stood upstairs in one of the guest bedrooms, rocking my daughter to sleep while chaos echoed through the mansion below. Phones ringing, doors slamming, people yelling legal terms I barely understood. For the first time in years. Ethan sounded scared. My phone kept vibrating nonstop. Missed calls from Ethan, texts from Diane, even his cousins suddenly calling me family. I ignored every single one. Then another message appeared. From Ethan. If your mother destroys this company, thousands of employees suffer too. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Because that's how men like him survive. They hurt you, then make you feel guilty for the consequences. A soft knock came at the door. My mother entered quietly, carrying tea like this was an ordinary evening. She sat beside me gently. You okay? And somehow, that question broke me more than the slap did. I started crying so hard I couldn't breathe. Not graceful tears. Not movie tears. The kind that come from years of swallowing pain until your body can't hold it anymore. I tried so hard, I whispered. I kept thinking if I became better, quieter, prettier, he'd finally love me. My mother's face shattered. Oh, sweetheart. She grabbed my hands tightly. A good man never requires you to shrink to deserve respect. I looked away because hearing the truth hurt. Then she said something I'll never forget. Your daughter watched him hit you tonight. What happens next will teach her what love is supposed to look like. Silence filled the room. Because she was right. Children remember everything, especially the moments their mothers stay silent. Downstairs, shouting suddenly erupted louder than before. Then came Ethan's voice screaming, "You set me up!" My mother didn't even flinch. "He's reading the financial reports now," she said calmly. "What reports?" She looked at me carefully. "The company's been collapsing for months. They hid losses, forged investor confidence, and moved debt through shell accounts." I stared at her in shock. "You knew?" "I suspected. Tonight confirmed it." Suddenly, Ethan burst into the bedroom without knocking. His tie was gone. His face was red with rage. "You think you won?" he shouted at me. My daughter woke up crying instantly. "Lower your voice," my mother warned coldly. But Ethan pointed directly at me. "She ruined everything." "No," my mother replied. "Your ego did." He laughed bitterly. "You always hated me." "No," she said. "I hated what my daughter became around you." That silenced him for half a second. Because once, I used to be loud, creative, confident, before marriage turned survival into my full-time job. Ethan stepped closer to me again. "You're really leaving over one slap?" And there it was. The sentence abusive men always use. As if violence only counts when it leaves permanent scars. I slowly stood up, holding my daughter in my arms. "No," I said quietly. "I'm leaving because you convinced me for years that I deserved it." His face changed. For the first time all night, I saw fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing control. Then my mother handed me a set of documents. Divorce papers. Already prepared. Ethan stared at them in disbelief. "You planned this?" My mother looked him dead in the eyes. "No. I prepared for the day my daughter finally stopped protecting you." And downstairs, federal investigators had just entered the house. The second the investigators walked into the mansion, everything changed. The Whitmore family stopped acting powerful and started acting terrified. From upstairs, I watched men in dark suits carry boxes out of Ethan's father's office while lawyers argued near the staircase. Diane kept screaming the same sentence over and over, "This is a misunderstanding." But nobody listened anymore. Because rich families survive on one thing above all else: the illusion of perfection. And tonight, their illusion was bleeding across imported marble floors. Ethan followed me downstairs while I carried our daughter toward the front door. "Vanessa, wait." His voice sounded different now, smaller, desperate. I stopped, but only because my daughter was asleep against my shoulder. Not because of him. He looked at me like he still believed there was a version of this story where I forgave him. "I was angry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to hit you." I stared at him quietly, then asked the question I should have asked years ago. "Which time?" His face dropped instantly, because we both knew the truth. The slap at the party wasn't the beginning. It was just the first time witnesses existed. My mother stood near the doorway while investigators continued moving through the house behind her. Ethan looked at her furiously. "You destroyed my family." "No," she replied calmly. "Your family destroyed itself the moment it taught its sons that power mattered more than character." Diane suddenly stormed forward, mascara running down her face. "You think your daughter is innocent?" she snapped at my mother. "She stayed for the money, too." Before my mother could answer, I did. "I stayed," I said softly, because I thought surviving abuse was what strong women did. The room went silent. Even the investigators paused. I looked directly at Diane. But strong women don't protect cruel men anymore. For the first time in years, I wasn't shaking. Ethan stepped toward me again. "What about our daughter?" he asked desperately. I held her closer instinctively. "What about the night she watched her father hit her mother?" He had no answer. "Because there isn't one." Then one of the investigators approached Ethan's father quietly. "Sir, we're going to need access to all offshore account records immediately." The old man looked like he might collapse. And suddenly I understood something terrifying. These people weren't untouchable. They were just protected by silence. The moment silence disappeared, everything cracked. Outside, rain started pouring across the mansion windows. My mother opened the front door for me herself. Not as a billionaire, not as a powerful investor, just as a mother helping her daughter finally leave. Ethan's voice broke behind me one last time. "Vanessa, please." I turned around slowly. The man standing there wasn't the confident husband who controlled every room anymore. He looked hollow, broken, and for the first time, I felt nothing. "No one warned you?" I said quietly. His eyes filled with confusion. I adjusted my daughter gently against my shoulder. "The woman you humiliated on Mother's Day." I looked back at my mother standing beside the door. Was somebody's child, too. Then I walked into the rain without looking back. 3 months later, Whitmore Holdings officially filed for bankruptcy. Multiple fraud investigations followed. Diane's charity board removed her quietly. Ethan lost nearly everything except supervised visitation rights. And me? I rented a small house with creaky floors, planted flowers with my daughter in the backyard, and slept peacefully for the first time in 11 years. Because revenge isn't always screaming. Sometimes, it's finally becoming free.